First of all, I'd like to begin by thanking our host, Chabad, for having us here to speak tonight. Chabad, as we know, was one of the major victims of last November's Islamic terrorist attacks in Mumbai, India. India has had a Jewish community, a continuous Jewish community, for thousands of years. And India has a unique distinction. The Hindu civilization of India is the only civilization on the planet to have never had any anti-Semitism. However, there has been anti-Semitism in India. India, unfortunately, has been the victim of invasion after invasion from European and Islamic empires. These groups, different groups at various times, perpetrated anti-Semitism. For example, the Portuguese perpetrated an inquisition against the Jewish population of India in their Portuguese colonies. The Islamic empires, of course, burned many synagogues and oppressed the Jewish population. So what happened typically in India is that the Jewish population would migrate away from the Portuguese colonies, from the Muslim empires, and move into the Hindu kingdoms in order to achieve a safety and sanctuary. This is an important distinction because it is not enough just to say that India is a good friend of the Jewish people or India is a good friend of Israel. It's more accurate to say that the Hindu majority of India is a friend of the Jewish people, while many of the minority populations, not so much. This brings me to the point here. How do we combat the scourge of anti-Semitism that is going on everywhere around the globe? Whether that be manifested by anti-Israel resolutions at the United Nations, or whether we're talking about assaults on Jewish students at universities, including right here in Canada. The need of the hour is to identify allies and friends in order to be able to stand together. And therein lies the problem, and also possibly a solution. We need to identify for the Jewish community who the real friends of Israel are. That is really the first step. India, for the last 5 years, has been ruled by, unfortunately, an anti-Israeli government. A government which depends heavily on Muslim votes for survival. This government has actually supported anti-Israel resolutions at the United Nations, including joining in the condemnation of Israel's heroic self-defense actions in Gaza this year. This party is called the Congress Party of India. It has always catered to the Muslim minority and has always been hostile to Israel. For all the good that he may have done, Mahatma Gandhi, who was one of the founders of this Congress Party, was vehemently against the establishment of the Jewish state in Israel. Mahatma Gandhi's grandson recently was expelled from a position at an American university for making anti-Israeli and anti-Jewish comments. And I say, good riddance to bad garbage. By contrast, however, there is a movement which passionately supports Zionism in India. This movement is known as Hindu nationalism. Hindu nationalism and its leaders have supported Israel not just today, but even from back in the 1920s, 1930s, before even the establishment of the State of Israel. Hindu nationalists believe that Hindus believe a state, that the world deserves a state for Hindus, known as India, and a state for Jews, known as Israel. From 1998 to 2004, a Hindu nationalist minority government ruled India. And that was really a golden age. During that time, diplomatic relations were strengthened with Israel, and anti-Israel UN actions were opposed. It is worth noting that the Muslim-supported Congress Party before the 1990s refused to even have diplomatic relations with Israel in order to please the Muslim minority of India. Ladies and gentlemen, Hindu nationalism is not small. It is a huge movement. This pro-Zionist movement in India encompasses literally tens of millions of card-carrying members. The Hindu nationalist family of organizations include organizations like the VHP, the BJP, and the RSS. It is really the largest consolidated bloc of pro-Zionist, pro-Israel support anywhere on the planet. If we can tap into this massive movement, this movement which represents the historical Hindu tolerance and warm acceptance of Judaism, then the problems of Israel and the problems even that we're facing on campus here in Canadian universities can be substantially mitigated. For there are Hindu student associations on campus. There are a large number of Hindus here in Canada who can and will support and stand up with the Jewish people. But there is a caveat to this. In order for this to happen, the Jewish population must learn more about India and specifically more about the Hindu nationalist movement. And please, let's not fall victim to propaganda. The mainstream media, there's a lot of propaganda against Hindu nationalism, just as there is a lot of propaganda against Zionism. And a lot of the so-called mainstream media, the comments they make, the claims they make, are vile and misleading. They're about as reliable. Listening to the mainstream media and trying to get an accurate read about Hindu nationalism is about as logical and reasonable as trying to get a fair and balanced coverage from the CBC or the Toronto Star. Impossible. We, the Canadian Hindu Advocacy, will spearhead a large educational campaign. We'll be starting with online tutorials available right off our website, and we will be continuing, most critically, with seminars and town halls such as this wonderful event. This is the way forward. This is the way forward for our embattled communities. On behalf of the Canadian Hindu community, I'm very, very happy to be here to take the first step. So thank you very much. Shalom and namaskar.